Hi, so this is going to be a little extra video on Ask Us Anything, and it's because our amazing student Richard has asked a question in our weekly competition, and I wanted to answer it immediately. And I will do another live in 30 minutes on the other grammar topic we were talking about this week. So Richard asked some questions on British stereotypes and clichés. You saying hello, Emily? Good girl. Yeah, that's not English. That's just Emily's language. So the first question he asked on British stereotypes and clichés was that British people are very reserved and do not like to talk about their feelings. Now, I would say this is more of a stereotype for the older generation. So I know that my father and my grandparents were definitely very reserved and didn't talk about their feelings very much at all. It was the expression stiff upper lip in English. So the idea is that when you cry, your lip wobbles. Yeah, that's definitely true with you. And if you have a stiff upper lip, it means it doesn't move, which means that you don't show emotion. And that is a very common British trait. But I'd say that the younger generations more and more have absolutely no problem showing their feelings. So I think it is possibly a bit of an old-fashioned stereotype of British people now. The second one is British people, which this is a great one. British people are world champions at queuing and would never jump the queue. Personally, so true. I would never jump a queue. I get very angry when people do it. In France, a lot of people queue jump. They don't really respect the queue. And I have been known to tell them that, did they think that I was standing here for my own pleasure? And I've been quite angry at the queue jumpers. Whereas British people, I have also known people to queue behind a mannequin in a shop. I actually found my friend who thought she was queuing for the checkout, but it wasn't a person, it was a mannequin. You know, those models, those fake models in the shop. So very, very funny that she was queuing behind a fake person. There you go. So yes, I would say that we are world champions at queuing, and it's a sign of being polite, and that thinking that you are not more important than somebody else. The next one, British people talk about the weather all the time, but really all the time. Yes, Richard, yes, that is true. I can't think of one conversation with my mother that doesn't also include the weather at some point. And pretty much everyone I know talks about the weather. I think it's because we're always so surprised by the weather. We're surprised that it's raining. We're surprised that it's cold. And we're even more surprised when it's warm. I mean, that's shocking. And I think most people, and I don't think it's just British, I think a lot of nationalities talk about the weather, because I know a lot of French people who talk about the weather. But what I find very funny is that it's often to do with the time of year. And I think what most British people will always say is, can you believe it's already May? Can you believe we have sunshine? Can you believe it's hot? Can you believe it's already, that 5 months, it's already the 5th month. We are always so surprised that the weather changes, and also so surprised that time moves on. The next one, British people can't survive without tea, and they can't survive without beer either. Now, so as an English teacher, I normally get if a student is wanting to give a gift, and I'm very lucky in that I've had many students here in France give me gifts when they've come back from their travels. And weirdly, it is normally always tea. Now, I love tea. I'm not saying I don't, but I do find it odd that that's what they think of for me is tea. From China or India, like it's amazing. And yeah, so I would say yes, tea is a big part of our culture. A lot of people often say there's nothing that a cup of tea can't cure, and I would absolutely 100% say that a lot of British people. Emily, can you go for it? I'd say a lot of British people think that. Beer, yes, I mean British men and women love beer. It's just cheap. Emily, not now. The next one, before Emily has a meltdown, which she's having now, is British cuisine is awful. No, it's not. It just depends where you go. If you... Oh, Emily. Sorry about that. Just Emily had a little moment. So back to people can't survive without tea, definitely true. Beer, I think it's unfortunately we do have a culture of binge drinking, and beer is obviously a very common drink to have at the pub, and there is a very big culture behind it. So yes, I'd say it is a pretty big thing in our culture. So yeah, I'd say we can't survive without either of them. British cuisine, though, is not awful. That was the next stereotype. British cuisine is awful. That is not true. It depends where you go. So in the UK, it is very rare to come across a restaurant that serves British cuisine, because normally you would find that in a pub. Now, unfortunately, it also depends if you go to a good pub or if you go to a rather a pub that's a chain, basically, and not very good cuisine there. But if you go to a really good pub, you can have some really amazing meals. But the best meals for British cuisine are out of families. My mother is the most amazing cook, and my husband's French. My brother-in-law is Belgian, and both agree that when my mum cooks British meals, it is amazing. So it just depends where you go. Now, I'm not saying I could cook British cuisine for somebody to enjoy British cuisine, because quite frankly, I'm not the best cook. I'm not like my mother. But if you are having a good meal with a British person who is a good cook and they're serving you British food, it's normally amazing. The next one, I'm not sure on, to be honest. British footballers can't kick penalties. I'm more of a rugby girl than a football girl, so I couldn't really say. But knowing what my friends always complain about with for their teams, and also what my father always said about British footballers, yeah, I'd say there is a certain problem with pressure, in that they find it hard to then kick those penalties, I guess. British rugby sometimes has the same. I mean, we didn't when Johnny Wilkinson was on the team, but then there have been some problems lately. I think it's just in any sport, there are people that find certain things harder. What I always find funny in sports is a lot of sports were actually invented by the Brits, by British people. So you got cricket, you got rounders, you got football, you got rugby, tennis. I think tennis, was it French? But anyway, so many sports. But yet we're not the world champions. We often don't beat other countries. The other countries are better than us. So I always find that funny. The last one before I finish, while Emily's still in a good mood, is British people, and especially British women, don't freeze. Even in winter, they like to wear short dresses. So I think what you have to understand is, yes, that it is very cold in the UK. Obviously, there's Scotland, which is very, very cold, and Northern England, very, very cold. And even in the south, you get the winds from Scotland in the winter. So it will also get very, very cold. And when you're going out, if you're going to a club or a bar in the UK, you often have to pay what's called the cloakroom charge. So that's the charge, the money that you have to pay to put your coat in a safe place. Now, it's I don't know anymore. It's been a while since I've gone out in a club in London. Yes, darling. It's true. It's true. I haven't gone to a club in London for a while. I know she couldn't believe it, but it's true. And the last time it was something like £1 or £2 or £3. It's £5 to put your coat away. Now, when you're young and going to clubs, that's a lot of money. That's money that could be going towards a drink. So you have two options, which is either you pay that money. Oh, sorry, you have three options. You pay that money, put your coat away. You put all your coats and your bags on the floor and you dance around it as a circle. But there it is dangerous because, you know, somebody could steal something. Or you do the third option, which is to go with no coat and run to the club and hope that you will have drunk enough alcohol for you not to feel the cold. That's what we call a beer jacket. So that's when we drink enough alcohol that we don't feel the cold and we can go around in our short dresses. I know I was guilty of that when I went to university in Durham, which is northern England. Very cold in the winter. And again, to avoid any charges, I would run, but it was only about 10-15 minutes. I would run to the club or the different bar in just what I was wearing, not coat, scarf or hat. So unfortunately, I'd say that there is a culture of wearing a beer jacket and getting to the club or bar with very little clothes. It's not that we don't freeze, it's just that we believe that we can manage without. And we are cheap. We don't want to spend money putting our coats away. But I know that's the case for me, or how I used to be. So I hope that has answered some questions that I found very, very funny. And I wish you all an absolutely amazing weekend. And thank you, Richard, for some brilliant questions.